Hey everyone, it's here, it's happening. DF Direct Weekly number 89. Packed show today, lots to talk about. A massive game that we've been hugely anticipating is finally in our hands and we're finally able to talk about it. Joined by the usual panel this week. First of all, John Linneman.
Hey Rich, how's it going? Good to be here.
Fantastic. Good. And Alex Battaglia, a chastened and bowed Alex Battaglia.
Yeah, it's another one of those weeks.
Punished Battaglia.
Punished Battaglia.
Okay, let's kick off with our first news topic. Okay, so literally as we record this, the embargo has just lifted on the Callisto Protocol. It's a sci-fi horror game that we've been massively excited by over the months. And John's video will have gone live by the time that you watch this direct. Huge amount to discuss here. John, I'm going to go straight to you on this one because, there's two stories here, right? Isn't there?
Yeah.
There's the story of the game and the quality of the game, which is exceptional, I would say. And then there's the issues that we've got with every version of the game other than the PlayStation 5 version. Which do you want to tackle first?
Let's start with the hardware situation, I think, and then I'll talk about the game after that. So yeah, this is one of the strangest releases we've had yet, right? It came in last week. The first red flag is that the version released for reviewers, maybe not a red flag, but it was essentially PlayStation 5 and then Xbox Series S and X. No last gen versions were included. So we couldn't test those.
We've literally still not seen them at this point.
Yeah, I've seen some impressions which kind of suggest that what we were anticipating has come to pass, but we'll have to check it out ourselves. So we have those versions. I spent the first day playing through the PS5 version and, several hours of it. And I walked away very impressed. It is absolutely packed with beautiful visual work, makes extensive use of ray tracing. And I love the gameplay, which we'll talk about. So it made a very strong first impression, very polished, beautiful animation work. The whole thing felt great. And then I was like, well, let's see how it is on Xbox. So I actually started with Series S because I was curious to see how that fared. And I wasn't too surprised by some of the cuts, but they did seem a little more significant than usual. The resolution was of course lower, but there was no performance mode, so it's 30 FPS only. It was also dipping below 30 FPS quite a bit, and the textures were like a quarter resolution of the PS5 version. It was missing things like subsurface scattering on the skin. Some of the materials just looked weird and wrong. There was just a lot of weird visual issues with it, and it's like, well, it's not great. It does feel like Series S owners are probably getting shortchanged here, but it's Series S, so it's not that unexpected, right? We've seen this stuff time and again. But it's the Series X version. This is the one that's absolutely baffling to me. I think I sent you guys my initial results right away because I was just like, wait, what's going on here? Because it was running very, very, very poorly. Like the initial test version last week, before patches, it was pretty much like in the between 15 and 25 frames per second in the quality mode. And it was consistently there. Like you saw the video, right?
Yeah, I was reminded. I mean, if you'd turned off the footage in the in that video and just had the performance grid, I think we were looking at a PS3 game.
Yeah, it does. I was getting some PS Triple nostalgia from this test. It reminded me of that a lot, actually. So that was bizarre. We actually alerted the developer to this as well because I was like, okay, this is seriously messed up, because at this point it was mostly a solid 30 on PS5 in quality mode and, reasonably solid 60 as well. Each had a little bit of dips here and there, but nothing major. But Xbox was like, even in an empty room, we're talking like 25 FPS, which is bad. But then I also noticed the ray traced reflections aren't working. So that's one of the key visual features, right? They have the shadows, they have reflections, and they have what we now know is called transmission, which basically is applied to like the flesh and fleshy bits used on enemies and some of the scenery, allowing like the veins and other interior organs to sort of like interact correctly with the surface, and it's cool looking. But no RT reflections. I think, Alex, you could agree based on the stuff we've seen that the game is pretty much feels like it was designed to have ray traced reflections, like all the material choices, because they're so reflective, right?
Yeah, definitely looks like it was designed around all the ray tracing features the game has. For example, in the beginning of the game, there's a mirror, and if you go to it in the ray trace off mode on, or ray trace off on PC, there's just like a hole in the wall where SSR can't do anything because it's a mirror. And, there's like other things that I think your video showed off really well, John, like the fact that like there's just like shadows missing in places if you don't have ray trace reflections, ray trace shadows on. So yeah,
which
definitely was.
Thankfully, the Series X does have the ray traced shadows, but it's the lack of reflections that really stood out. And I think the biggest problem for me there is that when using SSR, like they still apply reflections to all the surfaces. They behave physically, in a physically probable manner, but the reflection source is in screen space, which means you're just getting disocclusion artifacts everywhere. Like every time you turn the camera, you're seeing stuff appear and disappear from the reflection data.
Yeah.
And because there's so many reflections, it ends up looking not great. But, when they are in use, the thing that impressed me a lot was that they have the roughness cutoff setting very, very low. So even highly diffuse material, like the cement walls and such, actually they reflect the surroundings in a very diffuse manner, which is very rare to see on consoles. I mean, you can see it's a little noisy from the denoiser, but it's still, I think it looks great. And the fact that it's not an Xbox is strange. Yeah. And we never really got an explanation for that.
Silence.
Yeah, I know.
There's no explanation because, fundamentally, the takeaway from this generation so far has been that Xbox has a silicon advantage that only sparingly actually manifests in any games in terms of extra features or performance. PS5 can actually outperform Series X in many games, but it's very rare that we actually see features missing from one or the other versions of the game because they are fundamentally built on very, very similar silicon, right? It's the same architecture. So I don't see any realistic, plausible reason why these features should be on one and not the other.
It seems like a mistake to me. Like I would imagine this would be patched, but it's hard to say because they did patch the game several times, and by launch day, the Xbox performance was dramatically improved. Still worse than PS5 overall, but it's not where it was. Right?
Well, that's the other thing, right, John? Because RT reflections have a certain cost on the GPU, certainly on an RDNA 2 GPU.
Oh yeah,
these are not insignificant effects. So the concept that those effects are not running on Xbox, and even so, it can run slower than PlayStation 5. Something is kind of weird. Yes, amiss, weird, wacky, crazy. It shouldn't be happening. The thing is, obviously, you spotting the fact that RT reflections aren't there was, again, feedback that you fed back to the developer. So it's not as if there's it's not, I don't think you can not see it if you're working on the game. So obviously this has happened for some kind of reason, but we haven't had any comment as to why. All we can hope is that, first of all, the Xbox version gets a bit more attention put into it to bring it level in features at least, and certainly in terms of performance, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. And exactly. Unreal Engine, again, it's not as if Unreal Engine has really demonstrated any preference for one system over the other in all of the testing we've done.
And the thing about it, though, is that it is, when it's working right on PS5 at least, it's a really stunning game. To the point where I'm actually surprised, and we haven't seen them yet, I'm surprised that they are shipping last-gen versions of the game. I mean, I suppose it's for sales, of course, due to the large install base there, but
ultimately,
it's going to be a wild one.
It's just got to be serviceable on the base PS4 because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Right?
We'll see. I mean, maybe it's totally fine on there, but we don't yet know what they're going to cut, what it's going to run like. We're hearing that loading can be quite long in comparison, whereas it's very short on all these machines. So there was a lot of confusion initially during those days. It did improve, but still, unexpected. But then,
that's the other takeaway, right, John? That when the review code arrived, PS5 was fine, absolutely fine. Didn't really need any patches, although the patches came in. So PlayStation sorted. Xbox clearly wasn't really ready to be reviewed.
Exactly.
So that's kind of problematic. And again, anybody doing platform comparisons out there, if your footage is based on pre-day zero patch, it's not representative of the game. It will look a lot worse than it does on Xbox. I suppose the one takeaway is that if you want the 60 FPS mode, you're not interested in the RT stuff. It's okay on a Series X, right?
Yeah. Actually, they're very comparable in that mode specifically. There are dips here and there into the 50s for certain scenes. It's not always clear why, but by and large, it's pretty close to 60 FPS most of the time. And if you have VRR, it basically looks flawless. Again, though, I haven't played as far into the Xbox version, so it's possible that some of the later scenes, which definitely seem more demanding, could have an issue, but from what I've seen of the first hour or so on Xbox, the 60 FPS mode is quite good.
Well, that's the other thing. When the patches came through, they told you to delete your save.
Oh, yeah, that was another thing. The notes in there said, if it doesn't fix the issue, delete your save. And sure enough, deleting my save did actually work, just as they said. It did improve things, but it didn't fix all the issues, and I had to replay through stuff again. Which I don't mind because I'm enjoying the game.
It's really difficult to draw conclusions about what's going on at the developer. But we can only, within the last sort of final hours of game development. But all we can really say is that PlayStation 5 was, you had about a week with it, right? It was great from the get-go. Xbox improved during that week, but still isn't quite where it needs to be. And then we got PC literally yesterday, I think, or the day before.
No, it was Tuesday. It was Tuesday that it came in.
And so if people are wondering why Alex is sitting there depressed beyond tablets.
Yeah, Rich, I'm just pretty depressed about this. Yeah, definitely, totally checked out. The one thing I want to preface this with is that I'd been worried about this happening for months. I'd written multiple times on Twitter and on fora across the web that I was pretty worried about this game having shader compilation stutter because the pre-release footage appeared to have it. And also, it's kind of the thing that I'm talking about this year a whole bunch, last 1.5 years, whatever. So I warned everyone that this was probably going to be the case. And it turns out it is the case. But let's talk a bit about what we got. So we got that review code on Tuesday. And it's, we got it. So a bit before launch, it's pretty hot coming in. And the immediate impression when you get in the game is that it's completely broken due to the shader compilation stutter. That is happening just in time whenever something is shown on screen, something new. And it is so incessant and so large just in the game's opening 30 minutes. And I only played about an hour into the game, and it was still happening with large shader compilation times, big stutters as a result. And the thing you just got to point out is that it absolutely just ruins the mood here with this game. And I'm at a crossroads kind of right now where I don't actually know how to review games on PC anymore. Because for any Unreal Engine title, and it feels like every single Unreal Engine title I've touched in the last 1.5 years, at least, has had this issue. There's none that I can even recall off the top of my head that haven't had it. So yeah, that's the feeling I get right now. And I don't know what to do about it because I'm constantly talking about it in the review process. It's the only thing I talk about. It feels like I can't spend the time to review the game in a normal way, any game that has this in a normal way, because it is the most pressing issue. Things like optimized settings or console comparisons just don't even matter if the game is fundamentally broken on PC. Who cares? I don't care at that point. And it's also making me really apathetic towards this whole review process, and it's making my life very unenjoyable. It's so sad to say this, but this is kind of like what I'm monologuing about. And I feel like I've monologued about this so many times before, but it's like reached ahead. And if they do eventually fix this with patches, which is totally doable, from like just pure development perspective, it should be doable. I don't want to see a half solution. I don't want there to be any shader compilation stutters here. Seriously, if I see any at all, I will still consider it unfinished, because the issue is so prevalent that the idea should be that the fix that should exist needs to be utterly complete for this to be considered actually fixed, in my opinion, because it was the thing that kind of ruined the game, and it needs to be the thing that is no longer an issue at all. And that's how I view it for any kind of shader compilation thing that's going to happen in the future. I literally don't want to see any shader compilation stutters in any games anymore. I will not give good reviews to games that have shader compilation stutters. And yeah, that's just kind of the way it is at this moment. It's really sad. It's not at all what I wanted for this situation, but it is the way it is right now.
I just keep thinking back to your wonderful video on Metro Exodus when it came out, and all the love you poured into showing the visuals, and that's fun content to make, and it just feels like that's not possible anymore on the PC space.
No, John. Yeah, you're right. Like, this is kind of the thing that I've been talking about. It's the only thing that I'm talking about. That's why I'm monologuing like this. I talked about this at Elden Ring at launch. It's not just Unreal Engine titles technically, but it is actually primarily Unreal Engine titles, and it's really hard to know what to do about this anymore. Like I just said, like the review process is completely broken if the games that are being shipped are completely broken, because I'm not covering, like, do I cover the game at launch when it's broken? Do I wait till they fixed it in X amount of patches later on? Like, I have to eventually move on, because if I'm spending all this time just covering a game that's broken over multiple patches, it's pretty unfair to other developers where I have a limited set of time and I have to somehow, I have to cover other games. If not, I'm just going to be constantly covering the broken ones and recovering them. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. That's not the life that I want to lead as a reviewer. I want to cover games that are complete at launch, and maybe have some issues that are fixed later on, but not games that are broken at launch and I'm constantly rechecking them. That's why Elden Ring was also kind of a pain for me, because it was broken in the review process, still not right at launch. And should I be giving my time out to constantly recovering a broken game, or should I be more fair to other developers and use that time to cover games that we wouldn't have covered otherwise? And I'd rather be doing that, honestly. So yeah, this is just a situation that makes me really sad. Yeah.
That's actually why the video is coming out later today instead of at embargo, is because we all wanted to wait to see, okay, is this stuff actually fixed at launch? And well, I tested Xbox again, same problem. You tested PC, mostly the same problems. And I think we have to get the word out there as fast as possible on this stuff. So,
I've been thinking about this, Alex, and I think you need to produce a manifesto of best practices for technical QA for PC titles at this point, because it's not just, obviously the stutter is rendering the game essentially unplayable. Actually, before I go on to the manifesto, John, I noticed you posted some impressions on Twitter of the new Need for Speed.
Yeah.
And, saying it ran pretty well. And somebody piped up saying, well, great, it runs on your PC that's got $3,500 worth of kit. But the point is that the shader compilation stutter, it doesn't matter. I mean, as Alex has demonstrated with a 12900K and a 4090, it doesn't matter how expensive. You can't buy your way out of this problem. This is a basic technical issue that the developer has to sort out. So yeah, I think going back to the manifesto, it's like, what do we want from a PC game? What is the basic technical criteria for competence? It's literally that bad at the moment. what is the criteria for competence. And the Callisto Protocol has a couple of issues based on your comments that I noted down, Alex. Obviously, there's the shader compilation stuff, but then there's this whole thing, which only a few PC titles do, but when it does happen, it's ridiculous. The concept that changing a setting requires you to reset the game. It makes actually tweaking the experience impossible, basically.
Yeah, Rich, that is actually not the only problem. Like you were saying, so in this game, when you get into it, there's definitely options you can tweak, and it seems like there's quite a few. They're nested really poorly in the menu. Like each setting group has its own sub menu, which makes tweaking even outside the game not too great. And there's an apply button that you have to hit and hold for a while. These are all not very good UI decisions. But the worst UI decision is, of course, the one that makes the game, in my humble opinion, pretty untweakable, is that when you are in game, the only option that you can seemingly change is resolution and some stuff regarding monitor sRGB type and maybe HDR, but nothing that actually affects performance other than the resolution. So that's a pretty big issue. And yeah, I mean, I can't actually even remember the last time I saw this in a game. It's so rare to see because it makes the game really untweakable. It's only meant for people like me. I'm one of the few people on Earth that actually can tweak a game if it has this, because I can sink the time into it for a video, even though I don't want to. I really don't want to. I find it really user hostile. But yeah, that's the way it is. And okay, so that's the one other problem. Maybe it's been in other games before that you can't tweak settings. I actually can't remember. It's been a while. Yeah, so that's the way it is. But another issue that the game has, that it seems this is an Unreal Engine issue, and it's probably related to whatever they did behind the scenes in developing this game, is that the game doesn't seem to, or Unreal Engine titles in general, quite honestly, don't seem to scale on anything more than 6 threads, 6, maybe 8 threads. And those threads that the game is using are not saturated fully. There's 1 or 2 threads that are pretty saturated, and then the rest aren't. So you could be sitting really CPU limited in the game, like I showed in the video, on a Ryzen 5 3600 at just above 60 FPS with RT off. But then you look at your core utilization and you see that only 2 cores are really being used. The rest are kind of just floating. And I've seen something there that I rarely ever see in any other title on the Ryzen 5 3600, usually, which is being super taxed in a lot of good custom third-party engines that aren't Unreal, like I've shown in videos before, is that in this game, I actually see cores parking and downclocking fully to just 3600 megahertz, which I rarely ever see, even though I'm being CPU limited, So that kind of shows that regardless of the situation with the shader compilation stutter, that there are some pretty big issues here. You're not going to get great CPU performance in this game. And I think that's why we saw a couple of posts online about people changing FSR settings or changing resolution and not seeing performance increases. I would imagine that's maybe some of that's menu bugs with the setting not applying. But another aspect could be people are CPU limited. And they're just not going to see great upticks in performance. And one thing I want to comment on that I wouldn't have commented on before, but immediately after the video was posted and launched, someone's like, did you try running the game DX11? And I never, okay, in this case, I do not consider running a game in DX11 any sort of fix, because it reduces the graphical options available to you. If you have a ray tracing card, running the game DX11 means you can't run ray tracing. So you're playing an incomplete version of the game based upon your PC, and that is not a fix. And secondly, due to the fact that this game is already so CPU overburdened, DX11 is actually, in terms of raw CPU performance, going to run worse. And that is not an alternative that I find at all reasonable. The game should just be fixed.
Alex, I'm genuinely worried for Unreal Engine 5 games at this point. We know that it can exhibit many of these same problems. And I feel like I don't know how you solve this, because
Well, that's fine. There are features that they're adding to the
I know
engine.
that's the thing though, but there's still the developers themselves have to do a lot of legwork. A lot of the most successful attempts at sidestepping these issues involve basically limiting shader permutations, and a lot of this stuff requires the tech art team and the artists to basically be on board from the beginning and not go too crazy with that stuff. Because when within Unreal Engine itself, it's so easy to just make permutations of anything you want all day long. You can just go nuts. It's like, oh, I want this to be a little different. I'll just drag and drop this here in the blueprint, and bam, we got some new material or new effect, or there's so much of that. It makes it so easy to do from an art perspective, but it's so rough when it comes to performance, especially with this compilation issue. So like Epic, I think, can do a lot to help with this, but I don't think Epic alone can solve this, because it's not like, Unreal Engine is extremely flexible for a reason, right? But it requires, good practices from the development side as well.
Well, yes.
Obviously.
It's like every single time we stop a sentence here, it's just like silence, because we're still kind of aghast that this happened a little bit.
The reason, quite rightly, why you're aghast is because you cannot not see it.
Yeah.
You cannot you cannot power past it. You can't come up with the excuse that, okay, the QA team were running 4090s or whatever. Likely they weren't, first of all, and secondly, even if they were, it wouldn't help.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
It's incredible. It's remarkably how this is considered okay to ship. It's not okay to ship.
That was indeed my point when posting about Need for Speed, was that yes, it's a powerful machine, but that doesn't mean anything with a lot of these PC ports. You can't power through it.
Not these days. No.
It's Need for Speed, by the way, is actually a solid port. I don't know how it scales on lower end hardware, but on this system, it runs like an absolute dream. There's zero stuttering in my case. It loads quick. It runs like perfectly. It looks beautiful. I like it a lot so far. So I'm really impressed with.
That's really good to hear. That's great to hear.
Okay, anything more about the Callisto Protocol? Because what's happened here is the inverse of your video, John, where basically you spent like 25 minutes talking about how great the game is, but then sort of bemoaning the ports. We've spent 25 minutes bemoaning the ports. And now we can maybe talk about the game itself just quickly.
Yeah.
Anything to add to your
I do
video?
want to talk about this a little bit, because the reviews came out and they're quite all over the place, and some of them are exceptionally low, which kind of takes me back to the old Alien Isolation super low score and IGN situation. And games like this, I think, are really tough to score, because there's definitely going to be, it's not going to work for everyone. Some of the decisions they made, I think, make this game. So I've described this as well. One of the key words used to describe God of War Ragnarok during development, they really mentioned this a lot, was it's a frictionless experience. It's a game that's designed, and maybe this is the way to do it, I don't know, but it's not, I don't think every game needs to be this, but it's a game that you can play through, and the game is always ensuring that players don't get stuck or have too much trouble. All the edges are smoothed off just enough to make sure that you're just always making forward progress, right? And there's nothing tricky about it as a result. Every puzzle is basically solved for you before you even solve it. The combat loop never gets that brutal. You never don't know where to go. It always tells you exactly where to go next. And a lot of games are like this these days. There are ways to do this in a way that appeals to everyone, like where you go in the opposite direction. Like I think Elden Ring is a good example. And one of the reasons I love that game is that it doesn't really guide you, but people found it super compelling nonetheless. The Callisto Protocol, though, it's not an open-ended game, but it's a good level of linearity that I kind of miss these days. It reminds me in a sense of Doom 3, which is a game I'm a huge fan of, in that you have a series of different areas and you're always moving forward, but each area you spend some time in, you're not explicitly told what to do or where to go. You have an idea of where to go, and you'll see like, oh, I need to get through this door, or I need to do this thing. But the game isn't like, oh, go do this thing. Here's an arrow. This is the thing you must do. So you actually have to explore, find supplies, and deal with enemies that are often challenging. And that's The other part is that the game is really hard, like shockingly difficult at times. And that does not appeal to everyone. And it's difficult in a way that's a little different from like a Dark Souls, where the enemies are extremely aggressive and they often swarm the player, and it's very easy to feel like you're helpless and you're just getting surrounded and you can't do it. But every single time that's happened, when I've just simply stepped back and rethink what I'm doing in that specific scene, I'm always finding interesting ways to get out of it. And like, for instance, there's the GRP. It's like this zero gravity glove that you can grab objects or enemies and fling them around the world. And that is a huge lifesaver. Like an example is this one hallway in like the psych ward. I'm going through it, 2 enemies. You know, I'm sloppy with my attacks. I take a couple hits. I kill them. I go forward. There's more enemies. My life is already low. I'm too close to them because I was running forward too fast. They just decimate me. And I'm like, well, that's annoying. Try it again. Second time, I realized, okay, well, there's actually these explosive containers over here. As soon as there's also like, you hear the enemies coming. So I back up. They come out. I grab one with the zero gravity. I use a heavy attack, knock him down. Then I lean over, pick up the container using the gravity thing, shoot it at the distant enemy that's still far away. He blows up and he's dead. Then I go running back over to the guy. I knock him down, shoot him in the head, and then you stomp him, and then you get an item from them from that. I lost no health doing that. And then you rush forward, and again, it's, you know, I have one of the weapons at ready, made sure it was loaded. It's just about using what's in your immediate vicinity, and sometimes it's not always obvious, but it's usually interesting. I mean, sometimes even so simple as like, oh, there's too many guys in this area, but there's also this railing here that drops down to like a lower level. What if I just pick up the enemy and throw them off the ledge? You know, that kind of stuff. And you can do that. They let you do that. So it's fairly free form, and the dodging is kind of weird because it doesn't have like specific timing windows. You just kind of hold left or right, but I found that pretty fun and interesting as well. You just imagine you're strafing back and forth in front of the enemy, and that's the direction that counts when they attack. You'll dodge out of the way, which is great. And as a result, you know, just going through the world, finding your way, learning to deal with these scenarios. I had a fantastic time doing it. It was just, in some of the boss battles with those like certain enemies, it's like when he appears in an area, you're like, how the heck am I going to do this? This is insane. Like, I can't believe they put this guy here. And figuring out how to beat it was really fun, I thought. So, I don't know. For me, I like the game, but I can see why it doesn't appeal to everyone. And also, it has those technical problems. So it's a tricky one. But if you have a PS5, I would say definitely check it out there. If you have an Xbox Series X as well, like, and you don't mind the ray tracing stuff, then yeah, you can enjoy it at 60 FPS and it's pretty good there. But we'll have to wait and see on the other versions, I guess, huh?
Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, we could talk about this all day, I think.
Yeah.
But we should probably move on.
We should probably move on.
Let's do that.
Let's talk about the next news topic. Small discussion point, this one, but this week, I've never seen anything quite like it before, but Nintendo put out a statement saying that there's a patch for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet coming. The patch notes don't actually relate to anything according that's going to change anything to performance, it seems. However, there's this interesting comment at the bottom. We are aware that players may encounter issues that affect the game's performance. Our goal is always to give the players a positive experience with our games, and we apologize for the inconvenience. Actually, thinking about it, John, I think going all the way back to Breath of the Wild at the launch of the Switch, there might have been some comments in there about improving the game experience via patches, but they've never explicitly talked about performance that I'm aware of. Certainly, you know, last few years, but they are pointing it out here.
It's very uncommon and uncharacteristic of Nintendo to specifically mention such issues. That's kind of the magic of Nintendo, if you will. And I think they've earned, Nintendo itself, Nintendo's own internal studios have earned a really solid reputation for a reason. They're experts at targeting low-end hardware, I'd say, and like getting exactly what they want out of it. They settle on the art design and they target a certain performance level, and then they just usually nail it. And I think that's phenomenal. Game Freak is not Nintendo, but Nintendo has a huge stake in Pokemon. And I mean, I can't imagine any of those internal Nintendo development teams just like looking at how this turned out and also kind of like wincing in disgust at the performance issues and the bugs and all that. Kind of like, wow, how we shipped this like with the Nintendo name on it? That just seems wild. I mean, people love the game, but it's really bad technically. And I think the fact that it is that bad is specifically the reason why Nintendo actually took the time to comment on it. I don't think we would have seen a comment if it wasn't quite like this. And I think that supports what was said in our videos and my comments and what people are saying about the game. I think it supports that notion that it really does have issues that could be solved. Hopefully, maybe. We'll see.
I guess that's the story, right? We don't know at the moment. But the point that being made is that Nintendo does seem to be taking it seriously, and hopefully things will get better. I don't think there's too much more we can add to this at the moment until we actually see patches that do actually address performance. It seems that this one, the one that's upcoming or out now even, is just addressing some bugs that crept in. But fingers crossed we'll see things improve going forward. Let's quickly move on to the next news topic, though. So this one's close to your heart again, John.
Yeah.
It's a John. We're giving Alex some time off to process Callisto Protocol.
I know, man. I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah, basically, Sonic Frontiers released a few weeks back. You really like the game, but there was clearly some technical issues again that need addressing. And two things. First of all, some good news. It launched on Series S with only a 30 FPS mode, which was incongruous, I would say, at the time, because clearly Series S could do this game at 60. That has now been addressed. There is a 60 FPS performance mode, but more to the point, some interesting work is being done by modders into addressing the technical shortcomings of the game, specifically the object draw distance, the range of objects, addressing the pop in there. Quite a lot to unpack here, right?
Yeah, so from what I understand, the way this game works is that every individual actor or object in the world has a range in and out value that sort of defines when it appears within the camera view. And so they were, I guess, setting this per object, and that's why it was a fixed value across every platform, so even on the PC, you couldn't improve it within the game's own options. Well, somebody seems to have found a way. Is this Dia the Proj, I guess?
That's maybe how you'd say it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Death
Project.
Death Proj. Yeah, okay.
I don't know.
I'm not good with these hacker aliases. I'm sorry. I apologize. He figured out a way to sort of multiply this value for the complete set of objects on Kronos Island by 3.5. And boy, does that seem to fix this issue. It looks fantastic with this. He posted a video showing this running with that issue solved with this new fix. And yeah, it basically does seem to eliminate most of the pop-in or drastically reduce it. Obviously, this is a PC thing, but this is kind of what I alluded to in the video, that, I hope the PC modding community can come up with a fix for this. And it seems that we're on our way towards that right now. So that's great news, because Sonic did not suffer from shader compilation stutter. It actually ran completely fine. They're also working to uncap the frame rate, because it was capped at 60, annoyingly, and there is work being done there as well. But this is a game that feels like the PC modding community is just coming in, and they're just going to clean up all the issues, and we're going to have this like really nice, polished, perfected version of what I think's already a good game. So
there's blame being laid at the Switch.
I heard that.
This comment, again from the same developer, the Switch set data has no difference between the range values compared to those on PC. So we can very much so assume that the Switch version of the game is, that phrase, holding back every other platform with how they had to optimize object ranges for that. It's not an engine issue. So we can file that under not great.
This might be, we don't know for sure, but based on this evidence, it does actually seem like this is one time where we can actually have an example of, yes, this game was held back by this hardware. And it has nothing to do with hardware performance or anything. It just seems like it was easier for the developers to set this value once for every platform and then not touch it, which is kind of weird, but
so weird.
Or to put it another way, it's too big for Switch.
That's too big for Switch.
It clearly is too big for Switch.
So it had to be downscaled. The range values.
Gosh darn it.
To 0.
But, hey, I'm happy to see this, man. Because I like this game a lot. It's good.
Yeah, it is kind of baffling, though, why there couldn't have been different range variables for each version. But,
yeah. What?
I don't understand. To me, that reeks of them wanting to, like, minimize potential issues during the testing process or during development. Like, if we just use a fixed value, it's easier for them, which I kind of maybe get. But
yeah, because variable draw distance has never been done before.
I know. For this engine, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's true.
This engine, I think, has always had fixed draw distance values on every platform every single time.
So good.
It's just that this is the first time they've done like these open world-ish environments, right? So it's extremely egregious in this case. I think the solution should have been, like, I don't know, have a data set for every non-Switch platform and then have a specific set just for Switch. Like, don't drag everybody down into the mud because of the Switch.
Well, again, it is kind of conjecture and theory, but
it is. Yes, that's true.
The evidence is compelling, shall we say?
Indeed.
Okay, let's move on to our final news topic. Not so much news, but more a trailer that we saw on IGN. John, every week I put a list together of topics on the docket, and then we sort of, just before recording, decide whether we're going to talk about them or not. But this one, it just says, I am Jesus Christ, prologue. And it's essentially a video on IGN, which is the first 12 minutes of footage from I Am Jesus Christ. The headline and the description of this video. I mean, we're playing some of it now, I assume. It's, yes, I Am Jesus Christ prologue gameplay NVIDIA RTX 4090 at 4K 60. The video description. The I Am Jesus Christ prologue demo is here, and we got our first look at gameplay. Join Jesus as he tells his mother Mary about his search for John the Baptist. Captured on PC using a 4090 graphics card, we set everything to the maximum settings as Jesus would have wanted.
Well, the problem, Rich, is that even at maximum settings, it kind of looks worse than Assassin's Creed 1.
Yeah, it's really weird looking game.
Well, it kind of looks like if Assassin's Creed 1 was running on the Origins engine and looks worse.
Yes.
That's kind of what we're getting here, to the point where, hey, maybe we need to reskin Assassin's Creed 1 into a biblical Jesus game.
Jesus simulator game.
Without well, we'll leave the assassination, the murder to the end, obviously.
Yeah. Unfortunately, spoilers.
Yes, narrative spoilers there. But I am intrigued by how this, what do you do in I Am Jesus Christ?
What engine is this, I wonder?
I don't know. I'm getting Unity vibes.
What's that?
I'm getting Unity vibes, actually.
Yeah, like it doesn't look Unreal for sure.
Yeah.
But it's probably Unity.
It's not the Halo engine.
Yeah,
No.
they brought slip space for this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a choose your own adventure kind of game based upon everything I'm seeing in this trailer here, where you talk with people and do stuff. I don't know.
Okay, I'm just sort of randomly cycling through the demo. There seems to be an angel giving a sermon.
So the thing that's catching my eye actually is when you're walking by certain structures, there's something about the world scale that feels off.
Yes.
Where with your camera perspective, Jesus feels like gigantic. Like he's running up to this arch and it looks like the camera's going to scrape up against the top of it. And his head comes up to the top of every door frame. And you're like, what? Is he a giant? Or what's going on here?
I just scrolled to the end of the video and there's like mission waypoints and objectives, and it just says the coming of Jesus, and there's like a giant exclamation point where you need to go. because Jesus is coming.
Yeah, mysterious ally. Intriguing. I'm kind of curious about this. I'm not incredibly religious at all. In fact, I'm not religious.
Join the club.
But you know, it does. You know, I'm cycling through the footage here, and it does seem to be sort of interspersing scripture throughout, and I'm intrigued. And obviously, well, IGN has set the bar here. It's got to be 4090 at 4K 60,
or else,
because Jesus wants it.
I actually see some merit in this idea of like retelling stories from something like that, like the Bible or you know, another religious book. Like trying to make an interactive game-based experience could be interesting if well done. I'm not sure if this is well done though. It's hard to say.
No, it's really hard to say. But it's at least it's in a long lineage of games. Like what is it, Super Noah's Ark? John, what is that?
Super Noah's Ark.
Yeah, the first-person shooter on the Super NES.
Wow.
A number of Bible games.
I was just cycling through some of the comments on IGN video. Hope nobody spoils the ending. Sorry.
Too late.
Spoilers.
Holy Jesus, this game looks heavenly. This one is quite sinister. Can't wait to see what mods the community will make for this game.
I'll give them credit though, by selecting this topic, they have successfully become noticed by people, right?
Yeah, otherwise,
which discovery on Steam is a nightmare these days. No matter how good your game is, if small indies barely stand a chance on there, it's tough. So just with this topic, they've now have multiple places talking about it. So good job.
Yeah, the comments just keep on giving. Black Jesus DLC.
Why not? Do it.
Oh dear. I mean, yeah, obviously we're sort of veering swiftly into blasphemy here. Yeah. So we should probably wrap it up. But yeah, certainly an interesting project. And yeah, it is strangely compelling. What can I say? That's it for the news stories this week. We ended with a whopper, clearly. Let's move on to supporter Q&A. This is the part of the show every week where supporters chime in with questions for the team. We can't answer all of them. We had something like 61 this week, which is sort of par for the course. But I have selected a few here which I think are quite interesting. First one from Eric Benoit. John's Twitter interactions with some Pokemon fans were quite entertaining a few weeks ago in regards to how poor the new Pokemon game looks. What Switch games would you say look better than one might imagine possible on the Switch? Would you ever consider doing a video on it like the PS3 1080p 60 video you did? John?
That's a weird question to parse. What Switch games would you
essentially which games would you say look better than what you would expect from the hardware?
Than what you would expect.
I mean, first one that springs to mind, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 perhaps.
Maybe, yeah. That's pretty darn impressive. No, I know Luigi's Mansion 3. That thing is incredible looking. Like it's legit beautiful, and I feel like that's a game you could just drop it on any other platform right now and it would still like look quite nice, I would say. So that's definitely at the top there. Metroid Dread, actually, especially when playing it in portable mode on the OLED Switch. It's 720p native, so it's proper. It targets the right pixel resolution of the screen, and it just looks so smooth and sharp. 60 FPS. The art's so well done. I mean, it's genuinely shocking to see how good that game looks in motion. I think that always impressed me. I mean, I would still go back to things like The Switcher, Witcher 3 running on Switch. Like, it's not amazing looking compared to other versions, but it's pretty darn impressive. And I think that was Saber Interactive that did that, who also did the Crysis stuff, which I would also argue the Crysis games on Switch are pretty stunning to behold, because Switch isn't exactly that much more capable than like an Xbox 360, right? But those games run a lot better than they did on 360, and they look a lot better too, including with the Svogi even, which is nuts. So like, hats off to those guys, Crytek and Saber. They did a good job there. What, any other games spring to mind, you guys?
I mean, even though it isn't a Switch game, I do think Breath of the Wild is perhaps the best looking game on Switch for my money. Just because I think the art style meshes really well with the, you know, general, like, it keeps within the low fidelity of what the platform can do.
Yeah.
And it's originally not a Switch game, which is funny that I'm saying that. But, you know, I think it holds up incredibly well. Looking at Oliver's video when covering Pokemon, him going back to that and showing that off was just like, wow, that still looks really good.
Along those same lines, the Breath of the Wild has all those physics interactions and systems-driven gameplay. Like, the grass can catch on fire and spread like Far Cry 2. You know, all these objects have actual physical properties. You can tumble down mountains and things have correct buoyancy. And there's just lots of different systems that all work together where things in the world behave as you would expect. Mm-hmm. And it's really surprisingly robust.
It's
okay. That's definitely up there.
Yeah, the id Tech games, obviously.
Yeah.
The thing is that I guess the problem with the question is what Switch games would you say look better than one might imagine? And we can imagine quite a lot, to quote Han Solo. And we have actually had our expectations exceeded, I think, by some of the ports that have been done there, which I think have been quite remarkable. But yeah, it's quite interesting
get
we
Gotham
go back to
Knights
Nintendo.
on the Switch.
Yeah, what if? Come on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think we should probably draw a line on that one. Next question from Mendo Shitaro. Given the success Valve has had with the Steam Deck and Proton, is the time right for them to have another crack at Steam machines, Alex?
I guess I would say so Steam Deck fulfilled a niche. It was like, PC gaming is so great, but what if PC gaming was also portable and a little bit more intuitive? Yeah, that's great. Would Steam machines fulfill another niche that is not currently filled elsewhere? And I'm not sure it really would, because it would require at least, like, to follow the Steam Deck model, like one base level of hardware, apparently. For like the benefits of Steam Deck to come about. Like, the reason why the games run they do is because it's all like kind of curated to a certain degree by Valve, making sure that they run a certain way. And, you know, like the entire interfaces as well too. It's all curated about that. The entire ability to sleep, you know, like things, it's all based upon like the design of the Steam Deck. I don't think they automatically translate over to a Steam machine necessarily. And I don't know if this is the time to do that. I think that has an interesting practical application, though, if there could be like a PC, junior PC, you know, like PC Junior, like your first starting PC could be a Steam machine where you don't really have to worry about drivers and issues because they're all sorted out by, you know, Valve HQ, who then just ships an update to your Steam machine. I kind of like that as an idea, but I don't know if there's really a place for that market.
I say bring back the PC Junior branding.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for PC Junior, yeah.
PC Junior. I think the point is the strength of PC is the diversity of hardware, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to be introducing Steam machines, which in theory would actually be constricted specifications, kind of goes against the philosophy of what PC gaming is about, in my opinion. And I actually think Steam Deck actually adds to the variety of PC because it's essentially trying to do something that hasn't been done before. It's
right.
Trailblazing, you know, other products. Handheld PC gaming is now actually something that is considered viable with, you know, with decent results. Although I haven't played the Callisto Protocol on it yet.
I'm going to load it up.
So, yeah, I think the Steam Deck is something quite different to the concept of a Steam machine. And Steam Deck works, and Steam machines didn't. I don't think they'd ever go back to trying it again, to be honest. I do like the idea of, you know, basically, you know, the PC Junior concept you're coming up with.
Thank you. I'll take my check in the mail, I guess, at this point.
It's intriguing, but at the same time, you know, why not just have a Steam Deck?
Right?
Which also does the same job. Let's go on to the next question. Hello, DF. This one's from Sebastian Oberhoff. Hello, DF. Who do you think is going to be the next to take a crack at implementing UE5's nanite or virtualized geometry more generally? And do you think this will eventually become an industry standard? John, what do you think about this one? Intriguing question.
Yeah, thinking about other developers that would potentially want to implement a system like this. I mean, I could see potentially the Frostbite rendering team taking a crack at this if they felt it was necessary. It's because they do create games that are often large scale using that engine where it would benefit from this. That's a tricky one. I would have previously said CD Projekt Red, but they've tossed away Red Engine, unfortunately. But that feels like that would have been something they would have invested in on their own. But a lot of the other custom engines out there, like the types of games that, like, you know, I think id Software could definitely do something like this that would be interesting, and maybe they would, but for the types of games they make, I'm not sure that that's that important, you know? It really just, like, Unreal is obviously made to handle such a wide range of potential use cases, and this is one of the solutions to allow those ever increasing world sizes to shine. Oh, I guess, you know, I could see Ubisoft eventually implementing something like this, because they're all about giant open worlds, and if they can find a way to essentially improve the long distance view and the basically hide LOD transitions and all that, and smooth out the entire world that way, it feels like something they would be super into, maybe. And they have huge engineering staff there, right? So, I mean, Ubisoft is weird because they actually have multiple engines still.
It's nuts that they still do.
And they're all good in their own way.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think my favorite Ubisoft engine is the, oh God, I just forgot the name of it. Snowdrop.
Snowdrop, yeah.
That's my favorite, probably.
And then there's Dunia, which probably the least impressive, but it's still, it's not bad. It does all right.
I mean, I thought Far Cry 6 looked pretty good when I covered it. It did look pretty good. This is an interesting question because I think there's other aspects of nanite than just the, you know, like the automatic LODing of geometry at a distance and handling subpixel geometry. That's like one part of it. But then there's this other part about how you kind of call on the GPU with this visibility buffer thing. And I think a lot of other developers are going to be utilizing similar systems to that. It's actually a pretty old idea, but it was just used as a core feature of nanite to make it work. And I think we've already seen a little bit of it in how they do foliage in Horizon Forbidden West. Uses a similar concept to that, interestingly enough, but it's not obviously not the automatic LOD thing. But I would actually like to see other developers take a stab at it, because as we've seen in the past, that this is like an area that's probably ripe for ingenuity, because it's a new frontier. So it's like, oh, we're just avoiding the hardware rasterizer and we're doing something else. And maybe there's actually going to be better systems than nanite, or things that do things more specific that nanite doesn't cover at the moment. So I definitely hope more people go in that direction, actually, just because it's very interesting.
That's a good point, Alex. When you throw more talent and heads at a problem, you get more interesting solutions, and that can potentially solve some of its shortcomings.
Yeah, that'd be cool to see.
Well, that's essentially what Epic has done. That's why Unreal Engine 5 exists, because this brain trust that they've got
is huge.
And it's actually probably one of the reasons why so many people are transitioning, because copying what they've done, producing a similar technology is not a trifling matter.
No, I can imagine.
Yeah, interesting question, though. I'm sure there will be other engines that follow suit, but where are they? We haven't seen any yet. Next question, this one from Tyler Dodge. Hey, DF, big fan of the content and just become a patron. Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is, why do some games physics break when you increase the frame rate? For example, Okami's developers say the game can't run above 30 FPS without breaking the game's physics. Similarly, if you try to run Far Cry 2 at 120 FPS, the non-playable characters start floating in midair. What gives? What gives, Alex?
I think this is just if you're trying to make a balanced system, there's like, just let's pretend you're a game developer and you don't care about systemic stuff in your games. Everything doesn't need to be done. If you just want a controlled system with controlled values, fixed values at a fixed frame rate actually does make sense, especially if you're developing for one platform where you know what the frame rate target's going to be. And that's kind of where it is. It's like a legacy thing at that point. It's like you're targeting something. Another reason why you'd want to do this is because if you're using floating point values and you're targeting multiple bits of hardware, or, floating point is, has issues or something like that, you could actually have issues where, when you try and make, what is the term? It's not reproducibility, deterministic. Like if you want something to be completely deterministic, tying things to frame rate and knowing you're hitting the frame rate and having fixed integer values actually helps. There's always this big fight about physics engines about whether they're deterministic or not, for example, and that's one thing that this can help if you're just using fixed values and whatever. I honestly don't know why it's done nowadays, though. Most of the time, like 99% of the time, when I ever see issues with it, I just always go like, God damn. I think the most recent one that I got tagged in, just considering we just talked about Red Engine, is that apparently if you don't use Hairworks hair in The Witcher 3, the hair physics is different at 30 versus any other frame rate. Yeah, like it bobs up and down more versus at other frame rates, which we've kind of seen, I think, in Final Fantasy V.
Didn't you have it in Horizon on PC?
Oh, yeah, Final Fantasy 15, I mean, sorry. Yeah, and
yeah,
it was in Horizon Zero Dawn at launch. It was definitely there at launch. It was really, maybe it's still also in there. I can't remember.
This is also true of Sonic Frontiers, by the way, on the PC.
Oh, yeah?
And that's why the modders are working on it. If you increase the frame rate above 60, a lot of things just misbehave. Like events don't trigger right, boss battles can become unwinnable. Stuff sort of falls apart, and they're trying to sleuth out the reasons for it.
That's interesting.
This problem, though, this is actually the root of all the woes that Richard had to face back in the day with PAL, 50 hertz consoles.
Right?
And back then, though, there were actually legitimate reasons because, you're working with much less capable hardware. You can't do big floating point numbers and all kinds of crazy mathematic operations. It has to be hard coded and done in such a low amount of space. You got to minimize the number of bytes you're using just to do these characters, and you can only perform certain operations at a certain speed. And usually between when the frame finishes drawing and it starts drawing the next frame, you have a few cycles to perform some arithmetic there. I've spoken with some developers that have done 50/60 hertz versions of Mega Drive games, and it's actually really pretty complex. You can't, it's not easy back then. And that's why I think a lot of games that were developed at 60 hertz, when they came over to PAL regions, they just run slow because, they would have had to go right back into the source code and make a ton of math changes to make it actually work correctly at 50 hertz. But these days, like you say, it's less reasonable, I'd say.
But before we move on, why do the NPCs in Far Cry 2 start floating in midair?
Why?
Any ideas?
I don't know why, but it's really obvious just in the drive up in the first game, because in Far Cry 2 you start the Jeep, and if you look to the left and right when those first militants stop you, instead of them stopping with the car, they're all going bobbing up and down in midair. It's absolutely hilarious, and it's only above 60 FPS. So that's weirdly enough one of those games from that era, which is kind of rare on PC actually, from that era, where a PC focused game can't be above 60 reasonably. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. This one from Big Boss 69. I'm just going to say it again. Why not 68, 70?
Yeah. What's up?
What's going on there? Do you guys think NVIDIA would stoop as low as to offer technology such as DLSS 3 as paid subscription services in the future? Well, yeah, there's an interesting question. Obviously, this would be a case of stooping low, I think.
It'd be so bad. Very bad.
Yeah. There's kind of like a re-architecting of price points in the PC graphics space at the moment that really isn't great, but this would be on another level completely. I don't know. Alex?
I can't imagine it now, given the market forces at play and the incentive. would be there has to be someone gullible enough to buy it. And
well, NVIDIA do have a subscription service. It's called GeForce Now Cloud Streaming, which I think is
right.
fair enough. But, actually locking features behind a subscription. I mean, we've seen there was a thing this week or last week even about Mercedes.
Yes.
And I think BMW are doing it as well,
yeah.
subscribing to gain access to features on the car that are already there. That's not great. I don't think they would stoop so low, but who knows what's going to happen. This would be a really bad idea, and there are far better ways to do it. I think there is actually something, a kind of. I'm not into subscription features for hardware. I'm okay with hardware unlocks. So let's say you could pay, I don't know, X amount of dollars to unlock more of the CUDA cores on your GPU. It would be a one-time purchase. Possibly that would be okay. But beyond that, I think we're on super, super dodgy ground there. And I hope to God we don't see it. The problem being that paid subscription services are on the up, right? And I think the key point, though, is that all of them have to offer value. And you can't offer value in a way that actually is actually about subtracting value for most users. It just doesn't work.
I feel like the big elephant in the room here would be, how do you even would developers want to implement this anymore at that point? How would you implement it in a way where you have a paid feature that you supposedly have to pay NVIDIA for, but then it's implemented into somebody else's game? Do they get a cut as well of this? Like, what incentive do they have to even do that? Like, it just feels like this would just be such a huge mess, when in reality, what they're doing is these features are effectively locked behind hardware. And it's usually because the new hardware has new features that make it not possible to use on older cards. But, the whole point is they want to sell cards, and these new features come out, and it's like, hey, we have this new feature. Go buy this card so you can use it. To then lock it again behind a second door would be insane.
It'd be brutal.
I don't think
so
anyone
bad.
would want to do this.
Yeah, I was going to say this could be the Kelvin timeline of PC gaming, but having seen Callisto Protocol.
Well, maybe they could sell a stutter-free. They could sell you a shader cache for your machine. It's like, spend $10 and we'll pre-cache everything.
We're going back
for your
to
hardware.
Going back to the shader butler, though. Which is the only solution to the problem at the moment, which is kind of nuts. Let's move on to the next and final question from Who the Hell Am I? If you were Phil Spencer and could make the decision to bring back an inactive Activision Blizzard IP, which would it be and why? John?
Ooh. Okay, I have a few ideas.
You do?
First, so Interstate 76, remember that one? That was good. They tried to do Interstate 82, wasn't as good. I want to see Interstate 99, where it's like,
Future?
It's the same concept, modern game though, but it's set in 1999.
Oh.
I feel like that would be a very fun take on that idea, and I would be all over that. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but that's something I'd like to see. I'd also like to see the return of Hyperblade.
What's Hyperblade, John?
Hyperblade was an early Windows 95 PC game that it was essentially like futuristic hockey set in a metallic half pipe. And it supported a lot of 3D accelerator cards at the time. And man, it was fun as heck. I loved Hyperblade on the PC, and with the success of Rollerdrome, which is phenomenal. Hyperblade could totally work today. And then two more. I've always said I like Hexen a lot. And I think the Hexen IP, the concept of what Hexen offers, could be done really well today. I mean, we kind of got this with, I would say, a Medieval, but that's more like a Heretic game than a Hexen game, I would argue.
Yes.
In terms of its inspiration. But really, Hexen, bringing back this idea, it's first-person shooter-ish style game, but you have like effectively like individual hub worlds that you're exploring, slowly uncovering the paths. Like, that sounds very satisfying to me, and the themes are awesome. I would like that. Final one, Pitfall: The Mind Adventure.
It's like
specifically the Mind Adventure. I freaking love that game. I want to see a new take on that and done every Pitfall game they attempted to make after the Mayan Adventure. I thought was terrible.
So just do the Mayan Adventure then.
Just do the Mayan Adventure and do like a proper follow up to it, but make it like, I don't know, like the Aztec Adventure. I don't know, something else.
Okay. Any thoughts on this one, Alex?
I had to
Lore of Baal Mysteries, perhaps?
Because John already mentioned Hexen, but I think someone could probably do Soldier of Fortune really well these days. Like, I don't know how many gritty first-person shooters, single-player campaigns there are anymore. Because a lot of it is all very multiplayer focused, and I like single-player first-person shooter games. Also, one thing, I think this is an Activision joint, John, correct me if I'm wrong, is Jedi Knight. Isn't that Activision?
That would be LucasArts, wouldn't it?
I think Activision.
Yeah, I don't know if they've got the IP there because it's Star Wars and it's so confusing. But I really do think that was Activision, and if not, I mean, Jedi. Like, I would love a real single players.
That was still LucasArts, but I think the reason. But it's because they published it. But,
okay.
It's a Raven Software game, which Activision now owns.
Oh, so. Well, that sucks.
It's a weird one, but
okay. Well, then if not that, well then, I don't know. I guess I'll just stick with John's classic answer of then Hexen, because we need a. I do like the idea. So like we already got with the medieval, like this heretic, more Doom style of game where it's like going through an area, but like I would like a game with like really cryptic environments and multiple classes to play through, perhaps in co-op. Like just like cryptic puzzle solving and bashing, sword and sorcery monsters. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Ooh, I have another idea. Return to Zork, except for you replace the TO in to Zork with the numeral 2. Return to Zork, and you bring back Zork again. Obviously, Return to Zork was already, based on those original text adventures, but the Zork IP is like it's ready. It needs to come back. It can become like the new Skyrim. I don't know. It's time.
Geometry Wars obviously is a lock.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Gosh, I forgot about that.
Why we have no new Geometry Wars? It's a sad thing. But I've been just looking at this list of IPs. Kind of reminds me that Activision did do games in the past where it was experimental. There was some interesting stuff there. And even their takes on first-person shooters had a nice twist, like Singularity.
Oh, that's a great one.
Right?
Yeah. So, I'd just like to see a return to a bit more of an experimental Activision as opposed to just the Call of Duty machine.
It's literally all they do.
Activision. It's not a dormant IP, but I want to see a MechWarrior game that's designed in the spirit of MechWarrior 2 specifically. Because I feel like the sequels never quite matched that. There's just something off about them.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Are they doing anything with StarCraft? It is Activision Blizzard after all.
Oh.
Just seems kind of weird.
They did a remastered thing, right?
Yeah, that's been a while though. I don't know if they've said anything about that. It's also kind of like how basic Warcraft is also kind of dormant, right? Like, when's the last time there's been a real-time strategy Warcraft game?
How about Warcraft versus StarCraft, the game?
Warcraft versus StarCraft, the game. They can do it.
Terrans versus orcs, and that's already orcs and humans.
I know.
Protoss versus
orcs. Yeah, that'd be great. Do it.
Okay. Well, I'll send these notes on to Phil.
Yes,
because unlike the question says if you were Phil Spencer, unfortunately,
this is true.
None of us are.
None of us are sadly Phil.
Okay, well that's it. That's the end of the show. And if you did enjoy it, please do like, subscribe, share, ring the bell for those notionally instant notifications. No guarantees, as usual. That is my disclaimer. DF Supporter Program. Get involved. Get involved in DF Direct Weekly, just like all of these people have. And yes, obviously, it is a weekly show. We shall be back next week. But in the meantime, thanks for watching.